Hello, my name's Jay. I just want to talk to you about Pascal, or Blaise Pascal, the French mathematician, and just share about his apologetic method and its relevance for today. The other day I spent a whole day from morning till night reading the writings of Pascal and covered about 240 pages. I was able to get a good grasp of some of the general principles of his thinking. I'd like to share them with you today, and I hope that it's a blessing. The first thing that Pascal does in his apologetic writing is try to show the unreasonableness of reason. He shows how, on many levels, from political to social to epistemological, how reason contradicts itself. The reason why he's doing this is because he believes in the doctrine of original sin. Because human beings are corrupted, he infers from this that one can logically look to reason and see how reason has been corrupted. He proves this on a number of levels. For example, he talks about reason and imagination, and shows how imagination has a powerful impact upon reason. He tells the story of, imagine a philosopher stood on some wire 1,000 feet over a precipice. The philosopher, no matter how logical and reasonable he is, will become frightened because his imagination will do overtime, imagining the fall that he could have. So Pascal, in a number of ways like that, shows how this idea that we can solve everything by reason is actually not reasonable. It's interesting to note that this method that he uses, I believe, can be shown to have been taken on board by a number of philosophical and scientific movements in the modern age. One can think of Gadamer, whose Truth and Method, where he talks about reason and science is not objective. I think Pascal had already prophesied that writers like Gadamer would come to such a conclusion. Another example is Michael Polanyi. I also think that perhaps the Dutch Reform School of Apologetics, which is culminated in Cornelius van Til with presuppositional apologetics, I think perhaps could be traced back to Pascal. The other thing about Pascal's understanding of reason, I think he was already getting a sense perhaps that the Enlightenment was around the corner, the glorification of reason being dispatched away from religion. And I think Pascal's writing in a way foresaw this happening, and I think he was trying to show in his apologetic writing, which he spends a considerable amount of time showing the great contradictions of reason. He shows this in politics, how there are so many different factions, in morality there are so many different ideas, etc. The relevance for that today is when dealing with modern atheists, one needs to hammer home this issue quite a lot. We need to take the atheist reasoning method and then show how that particular reasoning method has contradictions within it, thereby making them ready to be able to receive revealed religion or true Christianity. The other thing I'd like to talk about is Pascal's wager. If you type into YouTube and put Christopher Hitchens Pascal wager and listen to Hitchens talk in this monstrous, yes, I would say absolute monstrous confidence that he displays in understanding Pascal's wager, you will find that Hitchens completely doesn't understand Pascal's wager, as Pascal would have put it. And in fact, if you look at the academic literature around and the academics that talk about Pascal, and if you look at what the atheists say Pascal says about his wager, you'll find that they've completely misunderstood him. When Pascal talks about his wager, the two key words are the finite and the infinite. Those are the two key words that he is using in his wager that you don't hear the atheist or academics talk about. And yet these are two key words that crop up time and again in Pascal's work. And when it comes to his wager, they feature prominently there too. So the key words of finite and infinite are important for an interpretation of Pascal, especially in this Pascal's wager. For Pascal, the wager goes something like this. You have the finite and you have the infinite. For Pascal, the infinite was a certainty. He says on a few occasions, you can go to the farthest reaches of the universe and you will come to the conclusion that you cannot prove it, but things go on infinitely. And he says you can go on the minutiae level of reality and keep going and studying it, and to the point where you come to the end, but you know that it goes on forever. There's an infinity. And then he says you cannot prove this infinity, but we know that it's there. So that's key for Pascal. So when he comes to his wager, he says to the skeptic, look, you can either go for the finite, in that case you will lose, but if you go for the infinite, what have you to lose? You're going to gain everything. That's his wager that he pontificates. And it's also in the context of believing in grace, believing in a God, etc., which a lot of his critics fail to take into consideration in the context of his writing. So in other words, when you're listening to people talking about Pascal's wager, go to the primary sources and look him up yourself, and you'll find that you need to understand him in his context of his work. The third thing I'd like to say about Pascal, which is important, is he believed in revealed religion. He believed, for example, the Bible as the Word of God. He believed the prophecies. They were a major plank in his defense of Christianity. And I feel that a lot of apologetics today are not standing on the Word of God. They're not standing on issues such as prophecy, that prophecies can show that Christianity is true. A lot of apologetics is not doing that. And I think Pascal would be scandalized that you could do apologetics without using those kind of arguments. The other thing about Pascal is depravity and grace played a key role in his apologetics. That we are depraved human beings, spiritually speaking. There is no spiritual life within us unless God gives it us. And secondly, we need the grace of God. The grace of God to help us to know God, to change, and to function in any area of life, whether it be society, whether it be in politics, or whether it be in science. So grace and depravity were key to his apologetic method. For me, I was very impressed with Pascal. He was such a penetrating analyzer of thinking, such a penetrating expose of society. I believe that he got science in its right perspective. He was a great scientist, a great mathematician, but it was only a servant to his God. He didn't like Descartes much because Descartes didn't put God at the centre of his thinking. And Pascal was not happy about this. There's a story about how they were on travelling together in a carriage, and they disagreed quite strongly. I think it's because Pascal was a humble man, where Descartes was more of a vain, proud man. And I think there's where the great integrity of Pascal. When you read him, he was so humble and he was so gracious. Pascal had problems with the Catholic hierarchy, and I think that one can read him and you could get the impression that he was just following the dictates of authority, but I think it was the clashes that he had with the Catholic Church. A lot of it was down to the fact that the religious experience that he had and others had that didn't accord with Catholic orthodoxy. But it was also down to the fact that Pascal, in the end, was a humble man, and out of humility he submitted to the Catholic hierarchy. But deep down, I think he believed that the Catholic Church had got it wrong on some of the fundamentals that were important to salvation and to freedom of thought. And I think in the end he hoped that with the work that he'd done and others, that there would come reform within the Catholic Church. And I think he thought that not everybody in the Catholic Church were as dogmatic as some cardinals were. Pascal had a violent death. It was quite painful, and he struggled quite a lot, but in the end he declared his love for Christ. What do I make of Pascal for today? I think we should have courage to proclaim Christ and the revealed truth of the Bible. I think we should pursue knowledge like he did and use it for the glory of God and for the benefit of mankind. I think we should see reason in its place, a good tool, but also flawed and full of contradictions, and we shouldn't become too proud and exalt reason. I think we should be willing to challenge the status quo, but also remain humble. Those are just some of the thoughts that I get from Pascal. I had a wonderful day reading Pascal. I'll always be indebted to him, and I'm going to be using some of his ideas for this channel. And I would encourage you to read him and study him yourself. You can find some resources on the Socratic Club. If you look for a Socratic Club on Pascal, there'll be some links to his writings and to some of his ideas. And don't forget to come to the Socratic Club every Friday night, 10 PM English time. You can find the link on the resource section at the front page of this channel. The Socratic Club, 10 PM Friday English time. Come down for culture, theology and Bible teaching. Well, thank you for listening, and God bless you. This is Jay. Take care.